The whole is probably greater than the sum of the parts, I think. Well, welcome back to the With Joe Wehbe Podcast. And let's ask, what the heck does that mean in the context of what we've been discussing in the last couple of episodes and what we've been talking about, how we're wired and our meaning fundamentals, right? Okay, so there's a great point made in Sapiens, the famous book, about parenting. About how parenting, especially parenting infants, young children, when broken down into tasks and how much time of a day actually goes into those tasks, looks something like a lot of time spent wiping diapers and changing nappies, feeding, not being able to sleep, consistently uninterrupted, attending to this infant, this demanding ball of life that needs care and your protection around the clock. How much of that time is actually enjoyable? And it turns out that it's probably a lot of the time is spent doing really unenviable menial tasks. Yet for some reason, most people to this day, until we live in Brave New World, opt into parenting. It's one of the biggest things on their to-do list in their lives, their bucket list, and will be for some time, I can expect. Now, I've never run a marathon and I don't intend on doing so, but there are a lot of people who, of their free will, run miles upon miles, kilometers upon kilometers, through so much pain. I mean, I've really never enjoyed solo running. It's always been a chore and I just don't do it. But I've got a whole group of friends who have a running club. That's one of their biggest hobbies, sources of meaning and fulfillment in their lives, based around opting in to run lap after lap, kilometer after kilometer. It doesn't make much sense to me. So much of that time is painful, right? So much of that time, if you're graphing the experience, if you were to survey them or interview them as they ran and talked about how they were feeling, they're perspiring, their mind and blood is boiling, their legs are aching. Even one of my biggest joys is playing soccer or football, as is the case with so many people around the world who love what is called the beautiful game. And I've, my brother and I and our team, we sometimes play around with a player tracker and I put it on, and sometimes I run more than 10 kilometers in a single game. And it's painful and it's busting my gut, and I'm chasing down people, throwing myself onto the ground, trying to tackle them and win the ball back. And there's so much pain involved in this experience and this activity, which I still look at to this day as incredible fun. Why? Now, if you remember the past couple of episodes, we've been talking about games. We've asked the question, are you playing the wrong game? And we've asked the question, what makes a good game? And we've asked the question, why aren't we playing the right game? That the right game is looking for answers inside rather than outside. And we also talked about how games are a build-up and release of tension. Now, and the way I reflect on this challenge and all these things is that, I guess, the whole is greater than simply the sum of the parts. The game of these games or games we participate in, from parenting to running marathons and playing football, are not just the sum of the individual units that are fun. It's not the sum of those fun experiences that leaves us with this happy, wonderful feeling and this fulfillment we get out of the activity. It's quite independent of that, because if you remember, if it was about that, we homogenize. We come back to homeostasis, to equilibrium, to the tightrope. Do you remember the tightrope, the pleasure treadmill? Because that's where we come back to. The reality is that we do need to find most of the fulfillment from the journey. That is the act of playing the thing, right? Because we enjoy a run or a game of soccer that has no tangible outcome, right? Even if it's a friendly run or a social run or a game in the park, which can still have a lot of pain involved. And there are many reasons, right? We could unpack the psychology deeper and deeper. I'm sure there's lots of things I'm glossing over, but on a metaphorical kind of level, when we look at the commonality amongst these journeys until we finish the race or reach the final minute or raise the child, what's that thing when we finish the game of hide and seek, even we want to start again until we get tired of the game, we play a new one. It's the way I think about it is that it's not necessarily enjoying every part of the game. We can't always enjoy the journey, but that doesn't mean it's not meaningful. And that's just, as I've thought about this and twirled it round and round in my brain, that's the way I think about it. A lack of smooth sailing does not mean the journey was not a good one or was not worthwhile. Maybe that's, at the end of the day, what we have to settle for. Maybe not every day can be complete bliss and can be completely optimized because of the reality of that pleasure treadmill. Perhaps more than anything, it's not looking for daily enjoyment or fun, but rather to appreciate the journey, which is different to enjoying the journey. We can't always control that, because there are so many people that have led meaningful lives that have not always had that much joy, but they've been meaningful. But it's very interesting to think about how different those things are. I'm sure they're not mutually exclusive. I'm sure they can overlap a lot of the time. But maybe it's just that they don't perfectly correlate at all, maybe not even close. If you remember, we talked about the happiness curve and the expectations gap. We talked about how, and midlife crisis, we talked about appreciation versus aspiration. Appreciating what we have rather than aspiring for more. And that's the word I kind of come back to here, is appreciation. Which is obviously not the same thing as enjoying. All right? I don't know if anyone enjoys changing diapers, but I'm sure many parents appreciate the role they play in creating life and creating family and participating in love and creation. So that can be something you reflect on today as we wrap up our talk about games and what makes them worthwhile, is just this question. Maybe today won't be enjoyable, but do you appreciate it? Do you appreciate the journey you're on? And you can reflect on that. I might take this opportunity, because we're a little bit way into this podcast now. If you want to give feedback at all, you can reach me on Instagram to give that feedback at @with_Joe Wehbe, WEHBE. And you can let me know what you think of the podcast, what stood out, or importantly, what can be better, what you'd like to see more of. Feel free to just direct message me, DM me on there. Apart from that, the blog is there for any further resources if you want to read further ahead, because all the podcast episodes come off the back of the blog. So that's with joewehbe.com/blog. Apart from that, just remember to share this idea with anyone it might open a door for, because after all, the best way to open 1,000 doors for you is to concentrate on opening doors for others. Thank you. This has been the With Joe Wehbe podcast, and we'll see you again tomorrow.